Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dragos Pepina and in today's video I'm going to show you what to do and what not to do if you want to achieve a realistic fur in color pencils. Now let's pick up our tools and get started. The first thing to do after you finish a sketch is to gently wipe it so that it is still visible. This will help you to draw over the sketch without it showing through the base layers or the details. I use a putty eraser and lightly dab the paper to leave the pigment off. This method protects the paper as it does not damage it. As you can see, on the right side I left the sketch as it is and even accentuated it a little to demonstrate what can occur if it is too thick. The next very important tip is to make a base layer using a light hand. This will avoid filling the tooth of the paper too quickly and give you a chance to erase in case you made a mistake and to avoid starting again. To make sure I didn't press too hard, I kept the pencil as far away from the tip as possible and applied the pigment using circular movements to spread it evenly as it will prevent unwanted marks. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is to press too hard on the pencil when you start working on the base layers. This will push the pigment into the paper and fill in the tooth, making it much more difficult to add the next layers. Making these mistakes will also leave you with an uneven and scribbly looking base layer, which should be avoided as much as possible when creating realistic fur. To make your job easier and avoid a flat looking fur, mark the direction of the fur growth using a very light pressure. These markings are meant to help you in the next steps and make sure that the fur has a natural direction, not a strange one that the animal doesn't really have. A wrong direction of the fur can turn a drawing from realistic to cartoony in seconds. Avoid as much as possible to invent the direction of the fur and to mark it using a high pressure on the pencil. The reference photo should be followed as often as possible and the direction of the fur should be taken from there. In my demonstration you can see how the base layer is still visible and pressing too hard on the pencil when creating the fur direction will result in a total disaster. Always work from light to dark and make sure the pencil is very sharp when you move on to the drawing stage because the fur is very thin. The pencil needs to produce some very thin and fine lines. Color pencils take a lot of time for this reason because you have to use many layers starting from the lightest to the darkest depending on the contrast you want to achieve. At the same time, I also emphasize the direction of the fur growth, making sure I don't just draw straight, shapeless lines. Sometimes you'll find cases where the fur will go in all the directions possible, so make sure you follow that direction. This can take the drawing to another level very quickly because it will lead the viewer's eyes in more directions. Colored pencils are not one of those mediums where you can work from dark to light like pastels. Of course, if you use them on a paper like pastel matte, this is possible, but many beginners just use paper specific to color pencils. Another big don't is to use dull pencils to add fine details. As you can see in my demonstration, it will result into some lines that are way too thick and will also cover up the spaces in between that will be useful for adding highlights later on. You can only use a dull pencil if you are working on a very large paper and the details are also zoomed in. To increase the saturation of the fur, we used a method called glazing. Glazing is a technique used to bring together light and dark tones and to bring out luminosity in an artwork. I don't know if the video shows how much the fur color has changed, but in reality, the difference is very noticeable. This technique is used to bring certain areas of the drawing to life or simply to make it more vibrant without erasing everything. To increase the contrast and create a 3D effect, I used a black pencil. Normally, I don't use pure black very often in the fur, but here I used it expressly to show the visible difference. So as you can see, This little effort ties all the other areas together and gives depth to the whole area. Keep away from using only plain colors to avoid the result of a lifeless fur. Of course, this depends on the type of the fur and the subject, but even the lightest fur has a certain contrast that needs to be rendered. I don't think it's possible for the fur to be completely white or black. What will eliminate the 3D effect immediately is drawing only parallel and overlapped lines. At the moment, the fur looks like raindrops, in no way realistic. The most important trick of this tutorial is adding highlights for a glowing fur effect. This step will take a drawing from flat looking to realistic immediately. My favorite tool for creating highlights is the Tombow Mono Zero Eraser. This is a fine tip eraser, ideal for realism as you can create some very fine details. All you have to do is to choose where the highlights will be placed and carefully erase, leaving behind the first base layer that will be visible. If you want to make them even more white, you have to press harder, but it's not guaranteed that you can still achieve a very strong white. A huge mistake beginners do is not to add any kind of highlights at all and to cover the whole drawing only with parallel lines that should represent fur. Naturally, wherever the animal is, there are certain highlights of certain brightnesses, even in dark places, because the light reflects off the fur no matter how bright it is. The disaster you can see at the moment is the end result of avoiding all the techniques and tips and tricks that need to be taken into consideration when we aim to have a realistic outcome. This is proof that following certain rules is the key to create a realistic fur. I hope you found this video useful and will try to use these tips and tricks in your upcoming drawings. Now we came to an end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it and you've learned a lot from it. I am posting one time a week and normally graphite, colored pencil or pastel related videos. So if you don't want to miss any of those, please hit that subscribe button and the bell button as well to be notified every time a video goes live. And I really hope I'm going to see you in the next one as well. Have a nice day. Bye guys!